Hey, everybody. Land. I'm going to wait for a second to see if folks come on here on Instagram land. Maybe it's not. Okay, I guess we're just going to do YouTube land. Let's do that. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to just click record on my little device here so that I can upload it to Instagram. Okay. All right. So now we're kind of live and recording at the same time. So I'm Craig, for those of you who don't yet know or just visiting here. So thanks for coming over. My big fascination and work in this time around, the only time around on the planet that I can remember, is, it has to do with healing and the stories around healing, the technologies that the technologies involved in healing, whether they're energy or stuff that I'm really interested in, energy healing, and why? Because I did never think that it existed, but then it had a hugely profound effect on me, more so than anything else that I had tried. And there are probably other stories on here of what my particular story of a truck at 60 miles an hour, and then had a life flight ride and had some ICU stay where they kept me alive barely. And then years later, I had a lot of problems that were subsequent to, downstream of that very traumatic car wreck. So, as much as I love a lot of other things in life, what became really fascinating to me was how I went from in a lot of pain trying to do things that I loved to no pain, and then the secret fortune cookie inside that was unexpected was, not only is there a world of energy, but well, after a lot of training, I found that I could, I could influence it. I basically learned how to play in that world of energy. So there's a couple steps where I had come from, if you will. So I'm not quite sure what happens with the internet connections. It says it's getting a little bit spotty. So hopefully this will just move all the way through here, and we'll record and then post if there's glitches. And if there's not, I'll redo it, and I apologize ahead of time. So what I want to talk about today, I want to read a story. And the story is of a client who was a psychotherapeutic client of a therapist and Buddhist practitioner by the name of Tara Brach, who's I think in the Bay Area. And in the description on the YouTube page, and those of you who are on Instagram and not on YouTube, I'll probably put a link here as well. So there's a link to both Tara Brach's page that goes right to where she has the specific detail of the story with her client that had some really pretty horrendous interactions, and growing up, and then this is Tara Brach. I think she's a doctor, so Dr. Brach's recollection of, or recount of a particular therapeutic exchange or client session. And then, so that story is on here. And then Jan Mullen, is that right? Yes. She basically wrote a story based on Tara Brach's client's report. So, and I've got a link to the PDF of this story as well. And I came about it through, I've been nosediving into internal family systems. It's a therapeutic approach, which their narrative is really congruent with the way that when I was in high volume practice, the way that I saw healing work, and the way that I would talk about it. And it's fantastic for me to come into a community of people who are accessing healing, like the healing resource in people from a completely different discipline and approach. And so I'm really enjoying the narrative and another way to look at what's happening on the inside, where the mental world and the emotional world and the spiritual world and the physical world all are, sharing us. And I'll probably do some more stories coming up of how it is that I am integrating, the physical, whether I have physical complaints or see them maybe in clients, and is that tying into a spiritual concern or emotional concern, something from the past, and how, rather than there being any, pathologies, so I'm not a doctor, I'm not diagnosing, and I'm not treating any pathologies or diagnoses, how to look at this in a way as an appropriate, intelligent, wise adaptation to stressful situations by the body mind. And when we look at things in a particular way with a particular story, and for me, it always comes back to the story, and the story that we tell about something determines how we understand it and how we see it. And so depending on how the Well Family Systems has got a lot of information on the YouTube. We got a live over here, but I think we're, there we go, back over there. So Internal Family Systems, I was saying, for the YouTube that just clicked off, was, sounds like they're seeing some complete healing with some oftentimes serious situations like, suicide and traumatic or suicidal attempts, suicidal ideation attempts, traumatic sexual abuse, and they've got a whole a whole list of things that they've been doing research on, and so it's and even I was just listening to one this morning where there's a doctor in the Bay Area they're doing some ketamine facilitated or assisted therapy, and they're seeing like full resolution of some of these issues. So I'm going to go ahead and read this story. It's called "The Good Fairy." All right, it'll take me a minute to get through, but again, if you want to have this story for your very own, you can check the link below, and I've included it in the description here, and we'll include it in the Facebook description, or excuse me. Yeah, Facebook, and I'll probably post this Facebook. So Facebook and Instagram. So we start. From the corners where the silence remains, there came the urgency to go to a mountaintop and scream out the whole truth. I sent out a prayer to God, to the universe. It's too painful. I can't take it. And she came to me. The power of my mind, the energy of the universe, an angel of God, cross-legged on the floor of my bedroom, looking up, about 8 years old. She said, "Sweetheart, here's the deal. There's too much going on here, and I don't have the power to make it be gone, to make it okay, or even to help you cope with it in a way that's not going to cause you some pain. What I can do, sweetheart, is to help you get through this time now, help you get through it as it is going on. I will come back, but it will come back to you. It will come back, but it will come back to you only at a later time when you're able to handle it and there will be someone to help you." So I said, "Okay, because I can't take it anymore." She waved her wand and said, "I'm going to send things that are happening into different parts of your body, and your body will hold them for you like a treasure chest, like a time capsule. Your heart is broken, and I'm going to have to let your rib cage close in around your heart and let your heart constrict so that you don't feel the pain of your heart breaking. And I'm going to have to really tighten up your neck and let it be a fortress with very thick, round walls so that what you are feeling doesn't get up to your mouth and you can't speak the words. You can't cry out for help and can't scream out in rage. And you can't breathe too deeply to feel what's going on in your body. And that fortress will keep the knowledge of what's happening in your body from connecting with your head so that you will not be fully conscious of what's going on. And I will tie up your ears so that you hear, but don't take too much in. And this is what I will do with your mind. It will store the truth in a deep place, sealed away behind steel doors of fear. But it will, for now, help you to live with, accept, and believe the lies you were told, that you deserve this and that this is the way your life has to be, and to put carefully in place. And it will stay this way. Looks like we're having a pause here for YouTube. And it will stay this way. You'll have trouble feeling and being close to people, but it will be your way of surviving. And you, my darling, will be a very functional human being in spite of all this pain, because you have a strong spirit and can hold all this in. And I will be helping you. You will not forget everything or flashes of images that will lead you like markers on a path to explore what happened. And I will leave a voice inside of you like a spark of light that will urge you to reconnect with your whole self, to find this person you are now, who's calling out for help and whose heart is utterly breaking. It may not be clear, this voice. It will manifest as an urge inside of you, but it will be your lost self speaking as it can through your aching body to come back and find yourself. When the time is right, you will begin to open up. It will be a very long process. It may take as long to heal as you've been in pain and in the frozen place. Finally, your body will no longer be able to hold all this in. Your muscles will begin to give way. You will feel an urgency to do physical healing. And that will begin the process of really unwinding your body and releasing what it will have been holding all these years. There will be physical as well as emotional pain in the process. But by then, you will be strong enough, safe enough, and old enough to bear the truth. And you will have a special friend who will be the grown-up you, who will hold you. Oh, that just got me. Who will hold you as no one else can, as you find yourself again. As all this begins to unwind, you will struggle to release your mind from the falsehoods it had learned so you could survive, and the doors of fear barring it from the truth. The mind may at first believe that only the person who gave you this pain has the power to take it away. And there will need to be a period of building trust that this is not true. You will struggle to release the flow. You will struggle to release the flow between the mind and body and come back together wholly. But you will do it because you are a capable person with a heart yearning to love. I don't know exactly how it will unfold, but the universe will move you through it. You will have to be very patient, very brave, very courageous, but it will be your training, your firewalk, your healing. And when you are through it, you will be a whole person, new, but still the same. Now I want you to go to bed. I will wave my wand and you will go to sleep. And when you wake up, you will forget I was here. You will forget you asked for help and you will not feel your daily pain. This is the only way I know to get you through this. You are a beautiful child. I don't know the reasons this terrible burden came to you, but I love you. and God loves you, you will have to love yourself enough to heal so that the rest of your life will be lived to its fullest, full of light. The memory of pain will still be there, but it will be in perspective. One day you will be whole again. Until then and for always, I love you. So that's the story. And I heard it read on one of it's like Derek Scott, I believe his name is in the link, derekscott.co. Is a therapist that does the IFS, which is the internal family systems. I love this is something that I talked about. I don't know if something I talked about and ranted on in the past back in the Facebook group. And those of you who are not part of the Facebook group, it's a closed, safe space that's called Tribe of Empaths. It's a Facebook. There's a Facebook page that should direct you over to the Facebook group, and it's a closed group. But basically, just knock on the door and I let you in. All right. It's just I've made it closed, and so that we can just keep the trolls out who are lurking on the Instagram and on the YouTube, and so I wanted to make more of a safe place for people who are sensitive, people who are trying to figure out their own healing process, trying to figure out we're being called, like on this story, called by the body, by your symptoms, either by your symptoms or conditions, might be called by particular experiences that you've had that don't make any sense. I'm going to shift this over. Okay. That don't seem to make any sense. And so you've had to go looking for an explanation by other healers or disciplines that hopefully don't shame you, right? That hopefully don't make you feel bad or like you have a problem. I heard actually it was Derek Scott that was talking about the DSM-4, which is the diagnostic and something manual. So it's how when you have a group of symptoms or issues, when it's in this particular cluster, they put a number in or disease or I don't know if it's a disease, bipolar disorder. So you've got them for mental illnesses and physical illnesses, and something what I really appreciate how Derek described this again, which is very congruent with how I see with my own clients, with the energetic work, is that there's a cluster of cluster of presentations that I'm not going to, I don't feel expert enough yet in the ways that the internal family systems talk about, describe the players on the game board, if you will, your game board, right? And you've got a deep self, and just in big broad strokes, and I can talk about it in a way that that I've always talked about is that there are parts that get disconnected or fragmented, right? That there was a you that something got overwhelmed, and at that point, the overwhelm may have been so big and not understandable that we didn't know how to process it, so we had to take it and stick it somewhere, and that somewhere oftentimes is in the physical body. And not only the physical body holding it, how does the physical body hold it out of our perspective or out of our view, just like with the little girl, that was stuck, that whatever that event was that Rosalie experienced and was experiencing a lot of pain from, was taken and stuffed somewhere, right? And then the body contorts because it's actually holds this like a burden. All right. It holds this, and the body actually contorts in very particular and physical ways, which actually now gets into some of my past training and is outside of what, at least so far, I've come across in the IFS training. But this is where it's really fun, because this is where our two disciplines end up coming in together, is how the particular way that the body does what happens if you growing up get a little bit too close to one of those spots, or somebody else starts getting too close to something that would be really painful or overwhelming to you, is that we have these built-in protectors. And there's a couple different types of protectors. And again, I urge you to look into the IFS on YouTube if this is sounding congruent with you. But basically, there's protectors, and again, I can't go too much into it because I just don't yet understand their languaging, and they do a much better job explaining, and a very thorough job of explaining. But it explains why your body appropriately might reach for food, reach for alcohol, reach for sex, reach for isolation, reach for friends, reach for things to either distract us, reach for ADHD, reach for a part of us that will actually, when we get too close, what is our mechanism for keeping us from getting overwhelmed? Keep us from getting into that place that has a lot of pain that we're not ready for. Either we're not ready for, or we don't have an understanding of what it is that we're about to see. Something I liked, so Richard Schwartz is the founder of the internal family systems, and something that I love, and those of you who have heard me before, one of my periodic rants is about starlings. It's about the murmuration process, right? And he actually talked about the same phenomena, the same starlings, when you see the body and all its parts start to come together. And so this was the part in my own healing journey that was unexpected. It was unexpected because it's not just what happens when all the parts come back and you return to whole. And what does whole look like? Are you just relaxed? Maybe. I mean, what does the body, and if the actual body, as all the parts start to return, we don't actually contort, right? And this is where I get, into another one of my rants. But if all the parts are now come together instead of separate and frozen, they start to come together, and then can share energy and information beautifully and in real time through all the parts. The physiologic presentation fluidly from moment to moment. It's the wave. It's this wave that actually transmits, and it's very clear and very obvious. And now, so this gets into, we've got people that are talking about this murmuration, this wave that happens in a healthy body. And it happens in energy work. It happens in yoga. It happens in Kundalini yoga. It happens on the caduceus symbol that has the cross with the two snakes running up it, right? We're seeing something that this points to is the internal healer, which is why I named my work Inner Knowing Energetics. Is that the healer, and this is something it's great that they recognize in the IFS, that internal family systems, is that you, with some mirroring, that the body's internal healer starts to reconnect you. Especially if you have the right story and narrative around what it is that you're doing in there. And this is why MDMA, at least as I have understood it, has very similar results. The MDMA, the therapeutically or in a clinical setting where they're using MDMA as a catalyst to help bring enough safety into the body and into the body mind, where some of those layers of personalities that are ADHD and depressed and anxious and fearful and compulsive, all of those being kind of different strategies and mechanisms, they start to unblend is the IFS word for it, unblend, and what gets revealed is that part of you that is that self. And when you're coming from that self, just bringing yourself and coming from that place catalyzes the healing, not only in you, but in people around you. And this is where we tie in the yogic work, why I like to work with yoga instructors for what aspect can, all right. Okay. What aspect can you bring of this energetic world to your discipline? Whether you are a teacher, a yoga instructor, a therapist, an energy worker, a doctor, that with just some basic knowledge of how the flow, that wave moves through the body, that's driven by self. So you're driven by your client, driven by the people in your class, and where to actually rest the attention of yourself across time and space, stimulate somebody else's self to go and focus in here. So for me, that's how the best way I can explain how the results that we've seen in person can also be seen in real time across this web thing, like on a Zoom call with people thousands of miles away. So not just yourself and the presence. Because when you want to burn a hole in a leaf, here comes one of my analogies, and you have a magnifying glass, it's not just the sunshine that does it. It's sunshine, and then you get to use your understanding of how aimed in self can accelerate that awakening and the self-healing in another. And this is really exciting because in today's world, we have these devices, and the upside to the devices that we spend a lot of time on now is the device allows us to use the tools like the magnifying glass, gives us a magnifying glass, gives us a way to actually see the three-dimensional body, how it's breathing, how it's moving, how is it locked down. And knowing some of the basic anatomy. Oh, the people I didn't explain before, or mention before, so the yogis and clients, or yogis and therapists and energy workers and doctors, but also couples, parents of kids, whether they have a particular challenge they want to help with, or just have a deliberate practice for actually connecting, and a deliberate ritual for connecting, not only with yourself, because it does work with yourself. I mean, yes, it can be very profound with yourself. But just as we are made up of a bunch of parts, that we are responsible for helping to bring back together, make more congruent, so we do this sort of thing, we are also an aspect of a larger organism. And if we're an aspect of a larger organism that's actually happening in real time, not only does our consciousness have access to what's happening in here, but has access. You can Google that, starlings and murmuration, and maybe I'll put a link on here as well. Because even as Dick Schwartz was saying, you can, and I think as I've said about the same thing, you can reach in and grab an individual starling out and see and have it be a self-contained conscious physical unit. Put it back in, and now it is actually a component, not a separate component, but an integral component of a conscious entity. Not a bunch of different consciousnesses, but a separate, larger consciousness. And those of you who have had very profound either healing experiences or intimate experiences with your significant other or somebody in the past where you recognize those walls of separation come down and you just, in a awakened way, merged with a larger consciousness that is not the product of adding two people together, but as a completely different, what's called emergent property. This is the stuff that's super fun. And as a process of my own remembering and my own healing. So thanks everybody for hopping on. I'll put the links here, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Questions, send them on over to me, either on here. You can send me a direct message. If you're interested in hearing more of this, I'm also putting together a free ebook. If you want to hear the ebook with some of the basics, kind of anatomy and physiology of this energetic realm, send me a direct message. All right. And if you've got specific questions about your own process and how this view might actually allow you to view your own process and your own history in a way that's will show you a way through to complete healing. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not diagnosing, and I'm not treating. If you've got medical concerns or